I love it when some of you guys join me in dancing. That was awesome. Well, welcome in everybody. Good morning. My name is Jesse and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. I know we've got a lot of new faces today, both live and on YouTube. So welcome in and welcome to the platform. We are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. This marks week 2 for us out of 2022. We had 600 events last year in 2021. They're all on our YouTube channel, so you can check them all out at whim whenever you'd like. And I'm so excited to dive back in with such a special array of programs to kick off the school year. So welcome back in, or the new year, so to speak, halfway through the school year. So welcome in. We're going to dive in just a minute with one of my very favorite speakers, one of my very favorite topics. But first, I wanted to give a few quick housekeeping notes. For all you folks on YouTube, share questions in the chat bar. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear where you're coming from. We have 46 classes registered from across the continent today. So welcome in from coast to coast to coast. It's so exciting having so many folks in. And in 2022, we are diving in headlong with interactivity. We are going to have a Kahoot quiz at the end of this broadcast. So if you guys want to get up kahoot.it, kahoot.com on a separate tab, get ready. I'll give you guys the game pin before we dive in with the Q&A. And new to this year, and Anna's very excited about this as well, we are going to have a Padlet. Where's that magic thing? There we are. Our Padlet at the end of the program. So if you don't get your questions answered, there'll be an opportunity to share those questions after the fact. Make sure you get all your queries about amazing birds answered. So check that out. I'll share that many more times throughout the broadcast, and I'm so excited to dive in. Now today, we are back with, again, one of my very favorite groups at the Vermont Institute of Natural Sciences. And what they do is rescue and rehabilitate injured birds, some of the most amazing wild animals on this planet. And they have educational ambassadors to teach us all about the wide and wonderful world of birds of prey. So if you guys are as excited as I am to see some awesome birds, we are going to turn it over to Anna to blow your minds. Thank you all so much for being here, and let's dive in. Anna, take us away. Thanks so much.
Hi, thank you so much, Jesse. It's really great to be here again. We love doing these kinds of programs, and I'm so excited to get to talk to all of you today. My name is Anna, and I'm the lead environmental educator here at the Vermont Institute of Natural Science, and I'm going to be joined by my coworker, Caitlin, and a couple of our live animal ambassadors during this program. But first, let me give you an idea of what the Vermont Institute of Natural Science is and what we do. Our mission is to motivate people to care about the natural world. And we do that in a whole variety of different ways. One of which is education, because we believe the more people know about the natural world and the wildlife species around us, the more likely we are to care about those things, and the better prepared we might feel to take small actions that have huge beneficial impacts on those wild animals around us. So we do programs on site at our nature center right here in central Vermont. We also travel. We go to outreaches around the state of Vermont and New Hampshire to teach in schools and libraries, at festivals. I've been to the Ben & Jerry's factory with some of our animal ambassadors as well. And we run summer camps during the summertime, field trips during the school year, and we're in 20 schools in our region helping to enhance their STEM education offerings. Another part of what we do is research, and the research helps with our mission because we want to give you guys accurate, up-to-date information, and we also want to know how we can be better humans for the wildlife around us. What are the impacts that humans have on the natural world? Can we measure them, and can we ensure that we're doing better by our wildlife species? So we're involved with a project that monitors the red-tailed hawks and rough-legged hawks in the northern part of Vermont by putting satellite transmitter backpacks on them. And we can actually see where they move throughout the wintertime. And that helps us know how they're using the habitat. But probably what we're most known for in our local community is our avian wildlife rehabilitation. And that just means that we have a bird hospital right here on site at VINS. And we see injured and orphaned wild birds that are brought to us by members of the public from around the area. We see everything from a teeny tiny little hummingbird all the way up to a great big bald eagle. And these birds are coming to us because they have some kind of injury. Maybe they were hit by a car. Maybe they flew into a building. Maybe they were caught by a cat and they need some medical care. And our staff have the resources and the expertise to care for these birds until they're ready to return to the wild. This is the goal with every single bird that we see. We want them to go back into the wild because that's where they're happiest and healthiest, and that's where they do the things that they naturally would do that support the network of biodiversity around them. But unfortunately, it's not always possible. Sometimes the birds have a very critical injury that just doesn't heal properly. And if they survive that injury, we can give them a kind of a second career, as we like to call it. We give them a chance to live out the rest of their lives with us in our care, where we can cater to their needs. And in exchange, they become ambassadors, as we like to call it. They become teachers, just like I am, helping us to convey all of this great information and hopefully motivate whole bunches of people from all around North America to take action for these wildlife species. So we are going to meet two of our ambassador raptors today, two of these birds that came through our wildlife clinic or another one somewhere else in the country and are now helping us to teach. And I thought it'd be really special today to focus on a particular kind of type of these birds. At VINS, we largely focus on raptors or birds of prey. When you think about a raptor, you might think about a dinosaur, or you might think about an eagle. And truth be told, both of those things are accurate. We today are not going to meet a dinosaur, but we are going to meet some dinosaur descendants. We are going to meet the great, 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 caret infinity, great grandchildren of those dinosaurs. And so that's why I have my coworker here with me today. I actually probably shouldn't be handling these birds on my own, so I'm very grateful to have Caitlin right here. So you can come ahead and bring our dinosaur out here to meet us. And there he is. So you might have guessed my joke here. This is Miami, is his name, and he weighs a whopping 111 grams. Miami is an eastern screech owl, and he is a common owl species in the eastern half of North America, and he is one of the smallest of the owls in North America. Now, he is not the smallest entirely in the world, believe it or not. There is a smaller owl called the elf owl that actually stands about half the height of an eastern screech owl and weighs more like 50 or 60 grams. That would be maybe 2 ounces or so. But as eastern screech owls go, Miami is also a rather tiny eastern screech owl. So we're focusing today on the tiny raptors of the world. Now, being tiny has advantages and disadvantages, as you might imagine. All animals have adaptations. They're well adapted for their environment. They have things about them that help them to survive in a given circumstance. A turtle has a really hard shell that protects them from predators. Ducks have webbed feet that allow them to paddle through the water. Being small has its own advantages. Being really small means that Miami, our eastern screech owl, can take advantage of homes that other animals might not be able to. These birds are cavity nesters, or living inside of a hole in a dead tree. If you think about a cavity happening in your tooth, that's when a hole develops inside of your tooth, and that's really painful and bad. And sometimes a hole develops inside of a tree. I don't know how the tree feels about it, but the surrounding wildlife in that forest, they depend on those types of cavities in trees as safe homes to live in. Now, Miami, as an eastern screech owl, he might spend the day sleeping inside of one of these cavities at any time of year because, as you might already know, owls are largely nocturnal. They're active, they're hunting, they're searching for food in their forested environment, mostly in the middle of the night. And so that means the daytime is the time that's left over for catching up on their sleep. So they will nestle themselves down inside of these little cavities and sleep the day away. They also will use different cavities in these trees to nest and to raise their young in the springtime. A cavity is a great little house to put a bunch of your eggs so that they'll be concealed from predators. Nothing might see them down inside of that hole, and protected from the elements. Being inside of a tree helps keep you a little bit warm or a little bit cool depending on the weather extremes that are there outside. You might have also noticed, looking at our eastern screech owl, that he is very, very well camouflaged. Not with Caitlin's shirt, but with a tree, such as the bark of a maple tree or an ash tree. And if he was snuggled down inside of that hole, sleeping away the daylight hours, you might just never see him. Your eye would glance right over that filled-in hole in that tree, it being stuffed up with a little eastern screech owl whose feather coloration blends in perfectly with the bark of that tree. So being so small, that's a real disadvantage if you're thinking of being, the #1 predator in an ecosystem, but he's got a special adaptation in that camouflage to help protect him from that instance. So he doesn't have to worry about his own prey seeing him sneakily hiding up in that tree, the mice or the salamanders or the frogs or the small songbirds that he's interested in eating. But he also doesn't have to worry about the larger hawks and the larger owls that live in his forested environment, spotting him and deciding that he might be a tasty snack. Now, you might also have noticed the tufts of feathers right on top of Miami's head. Those ear tufts, as we call them, are not actually ears. So put that out of your mind. I don't know why they're called ear tufts, except that they kind of look like little cat ears. Another great word for them is plumicorns. They are the plumes on top of his head. Plumicorn. I just think that's a great word. And those actually help with his camouflage as well. Because if he doesn't happen to be nestled up against the bark of a tree, he might be standing out on the edge of a branch. And if something spooks him or scares him and he needs to hide really, really fast, he'll skinny his body down, pulling one wing in front of his belly feathers and stick those plumicorns up as high as they'll go and look like a little broken off bit of the branch that he's sitting on. He blends in so seamlessly with that branch that you might overlook him, even if he's sitting right there in plain sight. Now, Miami has never really gotten the chance to use all of his camouflage abilities against the predators of the forest, and that's probably a good thing for him, because he's here with us because of an injury. When Miami was a little chick in the nest, his nest tree was actually cut down. And this is an unfortunate thing that can happen. Especially as us as humans, we tend to see dead trees as a hazard. You should definitely cut down a dead tree. I'll say that you should definitely cut down a dead tree if it's threatening to fall on your house. Our safety is paramount. But Miami's tree had a whole little family of screech owls living in it when it was cut down. And so Miami hit his head really hard on the way down out of that tree, and it blinded him in his right eye. So he has no vision whatsoever on the right side of his face. And the left side is okay, but having just one of those two eyes functional means that he's at a pretty bad disadvantage, that he wouldn't be able as easily to find food, to navigate through his forest home, or to watch out for predators. So that's how he ended up with us in our care. And he helps us teach about the vital importance of those cavities in dead trees for wildlife homes. Should you have a dead tree standing in the middle of a woodlot, in the middle of a forest, there's no reason to cut it down. In fact, there's many, many reasons to leave it standing. And it could stay standing for 100 years after the tree dies and provide homes for generations of these tiny little owls. So that's a little bit about Miami, our tiny eastern screech owl here. He's going to make one more pass at the camera so you can get a good look at those feathers. It has a hard time focusing sometimes, and his beautiful pale green eyes. He's just an amazing, amazing predator. So we'll say goodbye to Miami. He's going to head on back into his crate. There's Jesse, you're muted, but we're all waving. Yes. And yes, so fantastic. So while Miami gets back into his crate, we're going to talk about the next ambassador bird we are about to meet. And to give you a little bit of a hint before he comes out, I'm going to show you a pair of wings from this next bird, not this individual bird. He has both of his wings, but we do have these little biofacts here, as we call them. These are wings from two different members of the same species of bird we're about to meet. And you might notice some things about them as I'm showing them to you. They're rather similar in shape, right? They've got this nice pointed triangular wing shape. It comes to a tapered point at both ends. You might also notice they're long and thin by comparison to, think about the wing of a turkey or a grouse. It's really wide and it's almost like a big circle or an oval. These are more like a small triangle. And another thing you might notice is they're two different colors. I told you they're from the same species of bird, these two different wings. They're actually both from a bird called the American kestrel. And the American kestrel is a falcon, and one of the only falcons that you can tell the difference between the males and the females. So this wing right here with its sort of bluish slate blue coloration on top and just a few little black spots. This is from a male American kestrel. And this wing right here, that's much more muted and darker. It's got brown in between the black spots, is from a female American kestrel. So we're going to meet an American kestrel right now. And we're going to continue to talk about the importance of those nest cavities as this bird comes out. And as you see him, I want you to think about that. And I also want you to think about the coloration of the bird's feathers. So he's actually going to be popping right out here of our little nest box. Hi. This right here is Westford. Westford is an American kestrel, as I mentioned, and you take a look at those edges of his wings there. You see that nice slate blue coloration he's got? He's also got one dark stripe at the base of his tail. So now we know, yeah, this is a male American kestrel. And the box that he just popped right out of there, he's going to go back to it and have a little exploration. That box is essentially the same to him as a tree cavity would be to an eastern screech owl. Except that box, you might imagine, was constructed by people. So that's another option that we as human beings have to provide habitat and homes for these small raptors in our environment. This little falcon needs a nest place in order to raise its young, and that particular nest place happens to be a cavity or a hole inside of a dead tree. In the absence of a dead tree, something that a human made, like a nest box right there, is just as good in the kestrel's mind. And Westford here, he really enjoys going in and out of his nest box, not because he's thinking of starting a family in there, at least not at this time of year, but because he is getting some treats as he flies back and forth with Caitlin and I. Now, you can see his long, pointed, tapered wings as I turned him around, and you probably saw them spread out while he was flying. The falcon's key to success in their environment is the fact that they're really, really fast flyers, and they're really agile and maneuverable. Having those long, thin wings with a tapered end allows them to make quick, tight turns on a dime. It also allows them to speed up and maintain really high speeds in a long dive called a stoop. So if our American kestrel here was sitting up on a tree branch above his favorite tree and he saw a meadow vole scurrying through the grass in the meadow below him, he might fly out over that field, intent on catching that vole. But then almost immediately, the vole might duck down out of sight, maybe into its burrow or under some grasses. And that kestrel then would have to either go back to the tree that it was sitting on or hang out in midair right above the meadow vole. Well, it takes a lot of energy to fly back to the tree that he was just sitting on. So what the kestrels do is they actually hang out in midair, hovering directly above where they saw that vole disappear until it pokes its little nose out of its hole again. And then the kestrel will tuck its wings into its body, so it's shaped like a nice little dart, a nice little torpedo, and drop down out of the sky, reaching out to grab onto that vole with its talons. And it's then that it can grab that vole and bring it back to its favorite tree to hang out, or to its nest box to feed to some young of that year. You don't want to go back now, do you? He's like, okay, I'm done with that job. We're just gonna sit here now. So Westford here, he's kind of an interesting story as to how he ended up in our care. If you're looking at him, you might have noticed that he does have an eye injury. But that is actually not the reason why we decided that he needed to be a member of our ambassador team rather than a wild living bird. He is actually an imprinted American kestrel. So when he was very, very young, he either fell out of his nest, found some way out of his nest on his own, and he was picked up by some human beings. And I like to think that those humans that picked him up, they wanted to make sure that he grew up healthy and strong. They wanted to care for him and make sure that he could go and be a wild American kestrel. What they didn't know was that American kestrels learn a lot about who they are and what they have to do in life from their parents. And if their parents are not kestrels, if their parents are humans, he's going to learn a little bit about how to be a human. which is not a useful bit of information for an American kestrel. So Westford here grew up with humans, thinking all the while that he's probably a baby human or weird looking kestrels. And he is really not well equipped to live in the wild. He doesn't know how to find his own food. He doesn't know what the dangerous predators are that American kestrels must face. Much like the screech owl, larger hawks and even owls would hunt these guys in the wild. So he needs to learn a little bit more in order to be a wild bird, and it's not something that we really can teach him. So we're very glad that he ended up in our care, where we can give him the right diet and the right exercise and nutrition, and we can let him explore what would be his natural behaviors as well. So I'm going to see if he wants to make his grand exit through his nest box now that he's had some time to think about it. Maybe not. Oh, yes, of course. Just needed a little extra prompting there. And that was our pair of tiny predators today. The tiny birds that live in our environment that help to control the populations of smaller animals in forests, in meadows, all night long and all day long across North America. Now, if you don't live in the eastern half of North America, you have, instead of the eastern screech owl, the western screech owl. And if you live very, very far in the southwest of the United States, you have the whiskered screech owl as well as the flammulated owl, which are two other small owl species that fill that same niche. Now, when we talk about a biological niche, we're talking about where these animals fit, where they slot in, both in the time that they're active and in the place that they're active. So the habitat, the migration time of year, the time of day that they're out hunting, all of these make up an animal's niche. And I want you to think, when you think about a forest at night that's full of crickets, that's full of mice, that's full of beautiful white blooming flowers and moths on a full moon night, think about what else fits in there. And it's probably a tiny little owl. And the same thing when you're out walking through a beautiful wildflower meadow, when you hear the crickets chirping, the grasshoppers buzzing around, and the songbirds singing, think about what else fits in that slot. It's a tiny little falcon called an American kestrel. So thank you guys so much for listening to us, listening to me really. Caitlin didn't have to say anything, and to meeting our birds. And I'm excited to answer any questions that you guys have.
Anna, that was so great. It's such a pleasure always to meet Miami and Westford every time. We've got some teachers that are just independently at their computers, and I think like me, their face just hurts from smiling after 20 straight minutes. I mean, so much fun to see them, especially when they make eye contact. It's so, there's nothing like it in nature. Anyway, we're going to dive in with questions. We've got a few folks on YouTube already sharing them, but before we go into full Q&A, have you done a Kahoot with me, Anna, yet, or is this your first Kahoot with me? I don't know.
I think this is the first Kahoot. I'm not even sure what a Kahoot is.
Well, we're going to find out together. Basically, we've got a quiz coming for all our students together. So if you guys want to do this in your classrooms, if you're at home on YouTube, I'm going to bring this up for everyone to see. We're going to do a brief little quiz on some birds of prey, some of which are related to some of our friends today, some of which are a little bit different. And Anna and I are going to give you guys hints with a few seconds to spare before the answers come in. So the faster you answer, the more points you get. Now, if you win, you don't win anything, but you do win our everlasting respect. Anna and I we're just so in awe of you. So please do keep coming in. Great, guys, over 21 of you so far. This is going to be so much fun. The pin, I'll leave up for a few more seconds, and then we are going to get underway. When we're done, get those questions ready in our live classes, get those thinking caps on, and we are going to dive in. Awesome, already over 40 of you. Way to go. Okay, Anna, first Kahoot for you too. We're going to get underway. And let's do this thing. 3, 2, 1 till our first question. Remember, faster you answer, more points you get. How fast can the peregrine falcon fly? This is the bird we did not feature today, but is the fastest bird in the world. So we got a lot of Americans today. I put this in miles per hour. 25, 50, 100, 200 miles per hour. 40 answers so far. Keep them coming. 8 more seconds. What do we think, Anna, with a few more seconds left? 25 miles, maybe?
I was going with it's faster than you think.
It's faster than you think. I like it. Well, the majority got it right. Over 200 miles per hour is how fast the fastest bird in the world can dive in a straight dive. Unbelievable. All right, good job. Bright Bobcat's our leader with 929, barely ahead of number 2. Owls can turn their heads 360 degrees. True or false? You only have 10 seconds. 20 seconds for this one. This owl is very surprised at the thought that he can maybe turn his head 360 degrees. What do we think?
That's very
60,
surprising.
there's so many of you. I don't think you mentioned this today. This is exciting. So what do we think?
No, I didn't. We didn't talk about owl head turning.
Ooh, okay. I think we're going to get a lot of the wrong answer in this. We've got 0 seconds left. So most of you thought true. Anna, it's false. Why is it false?
It's false. Ah, yes. I'm sorry to break it to you. It is false. Owls cannot turn their heads fully around like this. What they can do is a little bit less, 270 degrees, which is 3/4 of the way around. And they can do that in both directions. So they cover all their bases.
That is very cool. I mean, we can turn it, like, don't hurt yourself, but maybe not quite 180, 140 or so. But yes, I think it was 360. They have no spine. Their head would just rotate like a wheel. That's no fun. That hurts.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, space sea lion, the greatest name of all time, is taking our lead. So question number 3. What is the biggest bird of prey in North America? Ooh, Kestrel? Is it Westford? Westford, like he's on the screen.
That's what he wants to think.
He thinks that he is. He's like one of those like cats that thinks that's a lion. Bald eagle, golden eagle, red-tailed hawk. But there's nuance here that we might get to, Anna, in a minute, because there was another answer that I could have chosen, but we'll see.
I was gonna say that's you're sticking with but they got it.
So we got a few got it. Most pick bald eagle. People's minds go to bald eagle. So the other thing here is that you could have said California condor.
Yes.
Which is the biggest in the world. It's the largest bird on Earth.
Heaviest flying bird.
Heaviest flying bird. So an incredible story with the condor. I guess when most people that was my question before this, is when most people think birds of prey, they think those hunting birds rather than a scavenger. But people should look up the California condor when they're done.
Oh, yeah.
It is amazing. Okay. Number 3, we've got Proud Rhino in the lead, going to our final question. Okay, I hope this is an easy one. How can you help wild birds? We didn't get to talk about this a lot today. I hope we do in the questions a little more, but leave them be, don't litter, make glass visible, or all of the above. Now, if you know me from the Cahoots, any of our class that have been with me before, know that when I throw in one of these answers, it's almost always that answer. 3 seconds left. So many of you have answered. And let's see who got it. All the above. Most of you nailed that. Yes, and we are going to highlight lots of ways that you guys can help save birds in this broadcast as we continue on. But let's see our leaderboard before we dive in with questions. So Mr. Pettix's class, I'm coming to you guys first in a minute in California. But our winner is Anna. Who won? Let's see.
It must be Space Sea Lion.
Maybe Proud Rhino. No, Proud Rhino took it from Space Sea Lion. Nicely done. So there you go, your first Kahoot. Awesome. Let's head to California. We've got folks joining us from all over North America. Mr. Pettix, come on up, 3rd graders, and take us away. Hey, guys.
Okay, come up, go up and ask it. Tyler. There we go.
My question is, what do they eat? And my name is Tyler Nixon.
Hi, Tyler. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. What do they eat? So between the kestrel and the eastern screech owl, they eat kind of similar things. They eat a lot of small rodents. So think about mice and voles. Maybe a chipmunk would be the upper limit for both of them. They also eat small birds like hummingbirds and warblers and sparrows. They might even eat insects like grasshoppers, caterpillars, in the case of the kestrel, dragonflies, because dragonflies are pretty fast and agile, but a kestrel can definitely catch them. So very good question.
Very cool. Thanks, Tyler. All right, we're going to head to Leeds Elementary, room 201. Unmute your mic, guys. Come on in and take us away with our next question. Hi. Unmute. Bottom of your screen, you got to unmute first. So all our teachers, unmute your mics.
Sorry.
There you go. Perfect. That's okay.
Oh. Do you have Miami's family too?
Yeah.
Miami's family.
Yeah.
Yes, we do not. So kind of the great thing about that was his whole family, they were taken to a rehabilitator in Florida. And the rehabilitator said that the other siblings were healthy and ready to go. And they were released into the wild, as far as I know. So they're out there in Florida doing their owly thing, thank goodness. And it's just Miami that had to be put into human care.
Fantastic question, guys. All right, let's head up the QEW to Mississauga to Miss O'Byrne's class. Welcome in and share away. Hi.
Hi. I actually asked them to type it into the chat. I'm teaching from home. They're all in their homes. Does someone want to unmute themselves and ask a question? Just wave at me. Go ahead, Lucas. Lucas, what's your question? How do they catch prey to eat?
Ooh, yes. There's so many details about raptor biology that if one day Jesse gives me an hour, we can cover all these things. But they catch their prey using that special adaptation on their feet called their talons. So you might have noticed when Miami was really up close to the camera that he's got these curved nails on the ends of his feet. And that is what they're actually using for prey capture. He's going to swoop down and grab something like a claw machine grabs a toy using those talons. And then he'll bring it back up to a special perch to eat it. In addition to being sharp, those talons are also really, really, really strong. So if you squeeze your hand into a fist and squeeze really, really tightly and pretend that it's raptor talons and then squeeze tighter than you ever thought you could possibly squeeze, most of you are probably about as strong as Miami. The 4-ounce eastern screech owl can exert a 25-pound grip strength in his talons, which is plenty to take care of a mouse or a squirrel and make it ready to eat.
Very, very cool. I'll give you an hour anytime you want, Anna. You just say the word, we'll bring you back.
All right. Yeah.
Let's head to KIPP North Star Academy. Let's go to Minnesota. Miss Adams' class, unmute your mic, come on in, and I can't wait for your question. We have really a really diverse audience today. This is great.
Wonderful, thank you. Demir, do you want to unmute in your mic and ask your question?
How long do they live?
Do you want to ask about the kestrel or the owl, buddy?
The owl.
The owl. How long do they live? He said.
Oh, how long do they live? Another good question. With the raptors, it tends to be the bigger they are, the longer they live. So our tiny little guys might live to be 15, maybe late teens years old. I knew an eastern screech owl that lived to be 19 years old, she was extremely elderly at 19. The kestrel, similar, probably 12 or 15 years. Yeah.
She flew around with a cane and everything so she could crawl on all the branches. Great question, guys. This is awesome. We're whipping through these. Miss Skinner's class, let's head to Austin. If you guys want to come on in, you're good to go. Hey,
how old is Miami and how did he get his name?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good question. Yeah, and that's the next logical question about how long does he live. Miami is now that it's 2022, 5 years old, which is, young, middle-aged, I guess, for an eastern screech owl. He got his name because that is where he's from. We actually name all of our birds after the city or the town where they were found in the wild and then brought to us to remind us that they are wild animals. So Miami's from Miami, Florida, and Westford's from Westford, Vermont.
A real indication of the diversity of groups and places that send you guys wildlife. Like, you guys really are the best of the best, and that's why people are so inclined to get you these amazing animals. And I'm so glad we got the chance to see some today. So great question, guys. All right, we're going to go to Ottawa Adventist for a live question. I'm going to take a whole bunch from YouTube, and then we're going to do another round because Anna, as always, is like our fastest answerer of all time. So Miss Hudson's class, come on in and unmute your mic. Hi, guys. Welcome in. Miss Hudson, unmute the mic, and then you're good to ask your question. All right. So yeah, teachers, keep those mics unmuted. I can't hear you until we bring you in anyway. We'll see. We're going to come back in a minute, guys. We'll wait till you guys get your mic unmuted. I'll see you in the background, but I'll take a couple from YouTube while we're waiting. So Miss Ray's class wants to know, do you have more than 2 bird ambassadors, and do you have any peregrine falcons? Back to our Kahoot quiz.
We do, yes. So we have at the moment 12 active ambassador birds that are regularly doing programs with us. We have another 6 that are either semi-retired or in training, hopefully to become ambassador birds, but we cycle through the 12 for the various different programs that we do here. The other part of the question was peregrine. Yes, we do have a peregrine falcon as a member of our team. He has done the Explore by the Seat of Your Pants once or twice before, but he's a little skittish, so not every day.
I was going to say, we meet Miami and Westford the most. Like, they're really good on camera.
They're solid. Yeah.
But if people do want to check out more of those programs, the Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants YouTube, if you type in Vermont Institute, you'll see all the past programs we've done with Anna. Such a special opportunity to learn about birds. And yeah, great question, guys. All right. Cadence in Mr. Shattuck's class in Chalk River, she wants to know what got you personally interested in rescuing birds. I love the person. Yeah, you, Anna, tell us more.
Well, I started bird rescuing through rehabilitation, actually, but I wouldn't consider myself necessarily a bird rescuer now because I do more of the education end of things. But when I was 11 years old, I went to my local nature center in New Jersey, in Watchung, New Jersey, and there was a woman there who was teaching a program about owls, and she had a barn owl with her on her glove. And I thought that was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life. And that was a job, and you can do that. And then I vowed that that's what I would do with my life. So I got into wild bird rehabilitation. I got into teaching, volunteer teaching with the birds that I worked with, and the rest is history.
Yep. I absolutely love how many of the speakers we have on these broadcasts, whether they're explorers, scientists, in amazing places like VIMS, it starts out with that connection with nature, whether they got taken fishing or hunting or out on hikes when they were a kid or saw animals in the wild or at a zoo or aquarium. I mean, it's so impactful. Really, kids, I know you're all at home now or you're in class. When you're done this broadcast, as soon as you can, go for a walk, go see what you can find, because it can inspire so much. Mr. Penix, I'm going to come back to you guys in just 2 seconds. One more from YouTube from Edmonton, frozen Edmonton always. Mr. Rincon wants to know, how long can they fly for? So if a bird just takes off, how long is it going?
That's a really interesting question. Wow. I don't have a definitive answer for you. I'm just going to say that. I don't know. What I would speculate was it depends a lot on the bird's physical fitness. Just like us, you can have birds that are totally out of shape and just cannot do the things that a very fit wild bird can do. It also depends on the wind direction. If the wind is at their back, they're going to go a lot farther because they're essentially getting that assist from physics. Like you can go, down a mountain very easily on your bicycle, but going up the mountain is going to be a different story. So a lot of it depends on the environment and the bird's own fitness. But yeah, that's a really interesting
question. It is an odd question. I like it. By the way, I've never thought of an unfit bird my entire life, so thank you for that image. I want to note wandering albatross, which is a bird that we're not going to cover ever in a broadcast because they're way too big to fit in the studio. 2 years they can go out on the wing and out over ocean. So without coming to land, 2 years we know that wandering albatross have been out, catching fish, living their lives out over the distant seas of Antarctica. Really cool bird, and the closest I think we can get to answering that question. So very neat. Yeah. Californians, North Hollywood, where y'all wish we were. Come on back, great third graders.
Okay. Hey, sorry.
No, you're fine.
All good.
Alvin?
Hey.
Hey, my name is Alvin. How long have owls been around?
Ooh,
that's a good one. Thank you, Alvin. How long have owls been around? I guess it depends on where you draw the line, because it's kind of evolution, as we know, is kind of a continuum. There's something that's vaguely owl-like. It's well adapted for its environment 300 million years ago, but not today. And it looks very different from what we expect an owl to look like today. If you're going to go with looking at the fossil record and you're looking for something that you could point at and say, yeah, that's definitely an owl, no one's going to convince me otherwise, about 10 to 15 million years owls have been around. And the owls that were around 15 million years ago looked like barn owls. So the tall, ghostly white birds with the heart-shaped face, the Valentine owl.
Owls are the best. I mean, I love Westford. I love peregrine falcons. I love eagles. I've seen one owl in my life, and I think it's just such a special opportunity. Certainly, actually, we've got a few Southern Ontario folks today, Vermont too. Like, we get tons and tons of owls in the fall season. I know one of the groups we've had on before catches 300 owls like a week when their peak season of migrations over Lake Ontario. So really cool programs. We'll have to link people to those when we're done. But great question, guys. Leeds Elementary, come on back in, unmute your mic. And 6 more minutes, guys. We're ripping through these. This is great. Hey.
Who wrote this one? How many birds do you have? Okay, here comes Theo. Sorry about that. I
already had my question answered to come out.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. So who wrote this one? If you wrote a question, come up here. because I have your questions sitting here, but you didn't put your names on them. Okay, come read it. Sorry about that. Here it comes.
Okay, all good.
Go ahead.
If American kestrels can catch dragonflies, how fast can they fly?
Ooh.
How fast can they fly? They can, it depends on whether you're talking about downward dives or straight flight over land. Straight flight over land, easily 40 miles per hour. And I don't know what that is in kilometers per hour, so I have to apologize. And their dives, there's not really a lot of data that's been measured that say like, yes, we know 100% peregrines can go more than 200 miles per hour. For kestrels, it's not as well known. I've heard numbers as high as 90, but 70 is another number that I hear a lot that seems very reasonable, 70 miles per hour. So that's faster than you should go on the highway. Yeah.
For our Canadian friends, 40 miles is about 67 kilometers per hour. So a little bit more than you would drive on a typical street. Speaking of Canadian classrooms, Miss O'Byrne, come on back in, unmute, and you're good to go. Hey.
Thank you. I'm just going to see if any of my students have typed in. Oh, how do owls make pellets?
Ah, that's a good one. We don't typically get questions about pellets, but they make pellets every day. So what happens essentially is an owl catches a mouse. Generally, it will swallow it whole. And when they do, it goes down their esophagus, down that tube, down to their stomachs. They have two stomachs. It goes to the proventriculus, which is a chemical digestive stomach with acid in it, and the gizzard, which is a mechanical digesting stomach that kind of just like blenders the stuff around. And once in the gizzard, if everything's been taken, all the meat has been cleaned off of the bones and the fur or the feathers of whatever they've caught. Since this is a mouse, it would be fur. It goes back up the way it came. All the while, the muscles of the esophagus are pushing that bone and feather mess into a little package, into a pellet. And eventually, it just comes up generally a few hours after the owl has had a meal. So our birds, we feed them at the end of the day, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the next morning there's already a nice fresh pellet on the ground from overnight.
Huh, we almost never get pellet questions. That's really kind of funny. Yeah, that was my first introduction to owls as a kid. As I went, they were like, "This is a pellet." I'm like,
right? Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, cool. Miss Adams' class, we're gonna go Adam Skinner and then Ottawa Adventist. If you guys get your mic working, if not, that's okay too. Miss Adams, come on in and take us away in Minnesota. Unmute your mic though. That's okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Is it good now? Okay, good. Clifford, you ready to ask the question?
I don't even know.
Okay, what was your question? I think it was what is the American kestrel's habitat like?
Yeah, that is a good question too. Their habitat is largely matches a lot of human habitat. They like big wide open fields and meadows, but not mown fields. So you're never going to see a kestrel like hanging out hunting in the soccer field in the back of your school, because it's mowed every day, and that's not great habitat for the kinds of food they want to eat. But a field that's allowed to grow tall grasses and wildflowers, but is kept clear of big trees and bushes, that's the kind of place where kestrels really, really like to hunt, because it's open, they can build up their speed, they can grab things out of the air, but they're not in the middle of a forest, which is where their predators live. So agricultural fields as well, things like a soybean field or a wheat field, you might see kestrels hanging out there as well.
Yeah, very cool. And I'm really glad we got to cover the diversity of habitats required for different birds. I think a lot of us sort of assume forest when we think of birds, and there's so many different places. You'll see them on seashores, you'll see them in agricultural fields to sort of preserve that diversity, that biodiversity that's out there. Great question, Clifford. Miss Skinner, come on, wrap us up from Texas, and then we'll just highlight some cool ways you can keep the learning going before we wrap up. Miss Skinner, come on in.
My name's Anusha, and my question is, what is the worst or most common injury you see at your center?
Oh, great question, Anusha.
The worst and most common. So I'm going to answer those separately, because thankfully the worst is not the most common. I would say at this time of year, the most common injuries that we see are car accidents, with a bird coming in, having been struck by a vehicle. And they might have head trauma, so they might have hit their head really hard. They might have problems with their eyes because of that, or they might have a broken bone or a broken leg. Something just like they got smacked and something broke. So that's kind of a pretty common injury. And those can be among the worst injuries that we have, although I will say that I've seen, we had a loon in earlier this year that had its legs completely tangled in fishing line, and there was a big lure, so a big flashy, colorful fishing lure that was just hooked into its foot. That was pretty messy and really sad to see. But fortunately, that loon, we were able to remove all the line and the lure. We actually sent it to another rehabilitator in Maine who kind of specializes in loon care, and that bird was able to be released. So it ended up being a really great story, but it was not pretty when the bird came in. Yeah.
But I'm so glad you mentioned that. The fact that there's a special center for loon care too. I mean, this is what dedication and passion does when you are as keen on animals as Anna and I are. And I really do encourage all our students to check out what the Vermont Institute does at vinsweb.org. We talked about some of the ways that you guys can help birds. And so I have so many banners here. The Protect Wild Birds section of their website, amazing stuff. You can learn about all those common threats for birds, what you guys can do at home. It really does go a long way. And some of it is so simple. The things that we can do right now when we leave this program as a classroom and as a family. Anna, this has been so much fun. Time flies and you're having fun, so we're near the end. Is there one last message you want all our classes to take away about wild birds or about what you guys do?
Ooh, there's so much. I would say something that actually Caitlin has said to me in the past that I just carry with me that I think is great, which is stay motivated. It can be kind of hard when there is a lot of problems in the world and there's so many things that you can do and so many things that people are asking you to do. You can feel overwhelmed, but stay motivated, stay wanting to help, and that is going to carry you so far.
I think, honestly, the generation that's in these classrooms is the most motivated of any ever. You guys are so amazing. You know the facts. You're so dedicated for biodiversity, to fight climate change, to do so much. So kudos to all our students in class today, and I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I do. Anna, as we said at the beginning, we're going to have a Padlet, so if you guys have more questions on birds you didn't get answered today, share those questions in the Padlet. We're going to leave that open for 2 days, so please feel free to share. We'll get all those questions answered. It's so exciting to have you all. And Anna, as you know, and for Caitlin as well, and for Westford and for Miami, we're going to bring in all our classes and teachers to join me in saying a big thank you and farewell. So Leeds, Miss O'Byrne, Miss Adams, Miss Skinner, Ottawa Dentist, thank you guys all so much. Have a wonderful day.